Revenge with Karen. Carter called me invisible on his second day. Loudly, in the break room, while sipping an oat milk latte his assistant probably stirred with a golden spoon. I was bent over a spreadsheet 3 layers deep in asset reconciliation for a grant tied to 3 federal agencies. He was bragging about his revamp vision. He said the word synergy twice before lunch and threatened to clean house. My name wasn't on the office door. Somehow I knew the mop he had in mind had my initials on it. Dowridge Tech was a mess when I joined 8 years ago. Back then, you couldn't find a signed compliance log if your life depended on it. The whole place ran like a toddler with scissors, but I liked the quiet corners, the ugly wallpaper, and the peace of not being noticed. I didn't need to be the hero. I just needed to make sure the feds didn't shut the lights off. Over time, I rewrote the protocols, linked every form to traceable chains, and built a system so clean it practically scrubbed itself. But I never asked for praise. That would have made me a target. Carter, on the other hand, had teeth made for smiling into cameras and a LinkedIn profile longer than his resume. Special strategy advisor, they called him. Nepotism with a badge. His first move, firing the contract's admin because she wore Crocs unironically. Second move, naming departments to innovation zones. Third, asking me what I did here twice. Hey, real quick, since you're already here and clearly have a taste for slow burn office chaos and poetic justice, tap that subscribe button and like this story. It keeps the stories rolling and the drama flowing. Plus, 95% of folks forget, and trust me, unlike Carter, we actually notice. Now, back to the fire. Strutted through meetings like a man rehearsing for his eventual indictment. I watched him butcher acronyms and pitch automation ideas that would crash our entire backend. The legal team whispered warnings. Accounting sent red flags wrapped in spreadsheets. But Carter saw no threat in me. Just a woman with sensible shoes and too many sticky notes. The funny thing about sticky notes is they remember everything when people don't. I'd built my little empire in silence, never made waves, never joined the wine mixer gossip huddles or the Slack memes about Jan from payroll. I just did the work, certification updates, audit reconciliations, post-merger compliance harmonization. Every click logged, every signature codified, including mine. My name didn't just sit on an org chart, it was etched into the guts of the firm's federal reporting system. Not out of ego, but necessity. After the acquisition 3 years ago, spent 2 straight weeks fixing a data breach, so gnarly the auditors had threatened us with suspension. After that, legal gave me carte blanche to formalize the rebuild. They didn't know I added a clause tying all audit verification to my digital key. Not even Carter's father, the VP, noticed. Why would they? I sent the summary in a PDF with a boring subject line. No one reads those. So when Carter held that town hall and said, "We're trimming dead weight," I didn't flinch. He smiled in my direction. I smiled back. He thought I was scared. I was calculating, because people like Carter, they forget to ask who built the dam before they blow the siren and flood the valley. And I'd built mine with reinforced concrete. The email subject line was, Departmental Realignment Phase 1. It came from Carter's assistant, sent at 9:01 a.m. on a Monday, like he thought we'd all be too groggy to fight back. 14 employees were summoned to conference room B like cattle to a polite slaughter. I was number 12. No preamble, no context, just we're evolving. When I stepped in, Carter didn't even stand. He leaned back in a $900 ergonomic chair like a frat boy in a borrowed throne and nodded toward an envelope on the table. "We're transitioning your role into automation," he said, as if my entire career was a rotary phone being chucked in favor of Bluetooth. "You've been great, real foundation stuff, but we're in a different era now. Time to let the data flow." I don't remember blinking. I do remember the weird silence, like the room knew I was supposed to beg or cry, or at least go full Gloria from legal and throw a paperweight. But I didn't. I just sat down, opened the envelope, scanned the contents, and nodded. "Calling me dead weight," I said. Carter chuckled. "Don't take it personally. Some legacy systems just can't scale." Behind him, his assistant giggled like it was a roast. I think that's when I realized he wasn't stupid. He was entirely unaware that stupidity had consequences. "Okay," I said, pen in hand. "Do you need this returned to HR or can I drop it off myself?" He blinked, caught off guard by the lack of a tantrum. Yeah, you can take it. Process the deactivation this week." I stood, shook his hand firmly, without warmth, and walked out with the envelope tucked under my arm like a thank you card from a neighbor who stole your dog and baked you banana bread about it. Down in HR, I waited 10 minutes behind a new hire complaining about parking validation. When I finally handed over the envelope, I caught Melissa, HR's compliance lead, about to toss it in her tray without a glance. Gently tapped the bottom corner of the packet. "There's a footnote," I said, casual as iced tea in July. She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah, clause 9.7 sub C, you'll want to log that before routing." She nodded vaguely. I watched her flip to the page, squint, then make a face like someone realizing their leftovers went bad last week. Her eyes darted up to me. I smiled. Then Carter came striding through HR with his phone out, laughing with someone named Ash about dinner reservations and a crazy morning. He walked right past the counter where Melissa sat holding the form, didn't even look down. I watched his hand sign another document for another transition case. 2 swipes, no reading, all speed, no breaks. He didn't see the clause. He didn't know what he'd just authorized. Nobody did. I gathered my things from my desk in 15 silent minutes. My photos, my post-it notes, old stainless steel mug that said Audit Ninja. On my way out, I left behind the plant Carter had gifted all department heads his first week, a fake succulent that looked like ambition and smelled like bad decisions. As I walked to the elevator, I passed Gloria from legal. She looked up from her laptop and gave me that "oh no, what now" wince. I shrugged. "Guess I'm no longer scalable." She rolled her eyes, but I saw the flicker of something else, worry. No one stopped me. No one cried out. Carter's assistant even waved goodbye with a chirpy good luck, like I was headed to Aruba and not about to let a time bomb tick down from a government database. Outside, I sat in my car and waited, 10 minutes, just watching the building. No alarms, no panic, they had no idea. And in that calm, I felt it, not rage, not sadness, just certainty. Had no idea what I built, or how fast it was about to unravel. That night, I didn't pour a glass of wine or call a friend or cry into a box of Cheez-Its. I didn't even tell my sister. I walked in, took off my flats, fed the cat, and sat down in my home office like it was any other Tuesday. The overhead light flickered, like even it knew something was about to shift, but I didn't fix it. I just flipped open the laptop and logged in. Folders were still there. Dowridge audit tree, cert chains, post-merger auth logs. 8 years of unglamorous documentation, stacked neatly in a digital arc, only I knew how to sail. I clicked through each one with the same deliberate rhythm I used when I rebuilt Dowridge's compliance from the burned-out mess it was when I got there. Back then, their audit trails were basically trust us written in Comic Sans. Now, every dollar tied to a timestamp, every timestamp to a cert, every cert to me. People thought compliance was boring. No flashing dashboards, no PowerPoint standing ovations, just quiet control, until someone flips the wrong switch and then it's war. At 7:42 p.m., I plugged in the backup drive. Red light flickered. Whirring sound started. I copied every log I had full clearance for, which, ironically, was everything Carter's new innovation core had inherited without reading. I didn't steal. I mirrored. Standard practice. Legal wouldn't even blink. At 8:03 p.m., I logged into the federal portal. There was a 2-factor code sent to my phone, still active. No one had revoked it yet. That alone told me how clueless they were. I typed in my token and entered the credential dashboard for Dowridge Tech. My name appeared at the top of the certificate chain, Officer of Record. Below it, 13 subordinate credentials, all auto-expiring if mine went dark. Hand hovered over the status change tab. One click, and I wouldn't technically be terminated from the system, I'd be retired. The kind of retirement that removes authority, breaks linkages, and trips a flag in the audit bureau's overnight run. It wouldn't set off sirens. It would just stop things, like a missing key in an ignition. No scandal, just nothing moves. 8:05 p.m. I clicked. The screen froze for half-second longer than normal. And status, retired federal revoke flag triggered confirmation hash. 239,847 AUD, and just like that, I was no longer holding the door open for Dowridge's compliance engine. I was letting it close behind me. No angry emails, no calls from Carter, no midnight oops messages from HR. Nothing. I shut the laptop, stretched my legs. The cat, sensing the room shift, hopped up on the windowsill and stared into the night like it, too, knew something fundamental had just altered. I sat there, barefoot on the cold laminate, feeling the kind of quiet satisfaction that doesn't need applause, because it wasn't just a job ending. It was a test beginning. The system would hold until it didn't, and when it didn't, the first domino wouldn't fall with a bang. It would vanish. A missing record here. A failed verification there. Until someone, probably the CEO himself, would open his inbox and find a message from the audit board. Primary officer unreachable. Compliance void pending. Action required. And when that moment came, they'd scramble. And I would already be gone. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, the CEO of Dowridge Tech, Gregory Marston, a man who wore stress like cologne and survived 3 acquisitions by learning how to yell without raising his voice, opened his inbox and froze mid-sip of his turmeric protein shake. Subject line, urgent. Compliance halt federal cert void detected. He clicked it twice, like doing it harder would make the words go away. The body of the message wasn't long, but it might as well have been written in fire. Non-verifiable records detected in quarterly sample. Certification tree incomplete. Officer of record unreachable. Federal compliance review paused pending contact. The bottom, a timestamp. A countdown. 9 hours, 48 minutes until contract eligibility hold. Gregory stood up so fast his chair toppled. Get me legal, now. In the conference room, legal was already buzzing. Julie, compliance counsel with a photographic memory and a talent for coffee-induced miracles, had 3 files open and a whiteboard covered in arrows. We got the same alert, she said as Gregory burst in. It's real. The hell is tied to the officer of record tree? He barked, loosening his tie. Julie turned the monitor toward him. On the screen, primary, Susan Keller, secondary, none tertiary, none override access. Revoked 10/17 per clause 9.7 sub c. Signed, Carter Winslow. Gregory blinked at the screen like it had personally insulted his mother. There's no backup. Julie didn't say anything. He just tapped the part that said revoked 10/17. The day before. The same day Carter transitioned Susan out. Gregory's jaw clenched so tight you could have heard it in the hallway. Across the building, Carter was holding court in one of the glass-walled lounges, grinning like a startup shark, and explaining his plan to rebrand operations into Momentum Ops. He didn't notice Gregory storm in, at least not until the door slammed so hard it knocked over a standing plant. We've got a problem, Gregory said flatly. Carter's smile twitched. What kind of problem? Gregory threw a printout onto the table. Federal alert. We've got 9 hours until they put a freeze on every one of our government contracts. Guess who the only certifying officer was? Carter picked up the page, squinted, and frowned. Wait, Keller. She's not even here anymore. Exactly. You fired her. Carter scoffed, defensive now. Okay, but she wasn't essential. We've got like 5 people who could pick up her slack. No, Gregory said, voice low, we don't. She built the system. She was the system. There are no backups, no overrides. You signed off on revoking secondary cert access last month. Her termination closed the tree. That clause in the legal reorg, the one we all rubber-stamped, that was hers. There was a silence in the room so thick you could stir it with a pencil. Carter swallowed. Well, can't we just get someone to plug in now? Recertify? Julie had followed them in. You don't understand. The certification isn't just a login. It's tied to her personal standing with the Federal Auditor's Registry. It's like trying to borrow someone else's fingerprints. Carter's voice rose. So what? We call her. Get her to log in. Tell her we need 5 minutes of her time. Gregory turned toward him slowly. You called her incompetent. You fired her. And you didn't even read the termination clause she added. Carter opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Gregory paced once, twice. We lose this cert chain, we lose our eligibility for $12.8 million in pending contracts, which means layoffs, which means shareholder panic, which means the board calls for blood. A beat of silence. And Carter, Gregory said without turning around, they're not going to ask for mine. Carter stood frozen, still gripping the printout. The fake plant lay on its side behind him. Somewhere on the building's 3rd floor, Melissa from HR checked the inbox and frowned at the ping from legal. A single-line question. Did Susan Keller's departure include standard revocation override? She clicked the file. Her lips moved as she read clause 9.7 sub c. She leaned back in her chair and muttered, oh, shit. By 9:03 a.m., the building was humming with something you could almost taste. The kind of hush that falls over a place when everyone's pretending they're not eavesdropping, but their Slack DMs are blowing up with variations of WTF is going on. In the executive suite, Gregory slammed the door to his office so hard the blinds swayed like they were trying to make a run for it. I want her file. Barked into the hallway. Now. Julie from legal was already halfway there with the hard copy. I printed the full employment dossier, including the legal appendices. Gregory yanked it from her hands like it owed him money and dropped into his chair. The folder landed with a thud. Page 1, hire date, 8 years ago. Page 2, performance reviews, all stellar. Page 3, security clearance renewals. Top tier. Page 4, contract renewals post-merger. Page 5, legal revisions signed under the realignment authorization protocol. He paused. There was a signature. Hers, Susan Keller, clean, unhurried pen strokes. The kind of signature that told you she read everything before she signed it. Then his eyes locked on a subheader. Clause 14, be compliance officer binding authority. He read it twice. Then again, slower. Effective immediately. All primary and secondary compliance verification pertaining to federal audit protocols will be linked to the officer of record, designated herein as Susan Keller. Revocation or replacement of this designation shall void all current compliance threads unless approved in writing by both the officer of record and a federal oversight liaison. There was a little sticky tab next to it, bright pink. Carter hadn't pulled the tab. Gregory's hands started to tremble. There was no override. There was no backup. There was no loophole. His lips moved silently as he scanned the rest of the section, praying, begging for a line he missed, a hidden clause, nothing. Just a beautifully watertight legal fortress, built by a woman his VP's idiot son had fired because she wore the same shoes every day and didn't laugh at his LinkedIn jokes. Dear God, he whispered. Julie hovered by the door. You see it now? He nodded, still reading. She pushed it through during the post-merger reorg, Julie said softly. Legal was underwater then. Everyone was rushing. We didn't question it because, well, frankly, we trusted her. She was compliance. Gregory set the folder down like it might explode. How long until the audit board goes public with the alert? We've got maybe 7 hours now, give or take. And if we don't restore the cert, she didn't answer. He didn't need her to. Gregory leaned back, exhaled, stared at the ceiling. I've got shareholders calling in 15 minutes to confirm the Q4 government funding outlook. They'll smell blood the second I flinch. Julie cleared her throat. There's more. Gregory looked up. Jesus, what? She left a final system note before retiring the cert. Not a message. Just a timestamp trigger. He waited. It triggered a read-only lockout, Julie said. No edits. No additions. Just a dead keychain. Can see the data, they just can't touch it. Gregory's mouth went dry. So the audit team's watching a fully lit system that no one can verify? She nodded. He stood, hand clenched on the folder. Call Carter. Tell him to get in here. Now. Julie didn't move. Gregory turned. What? She hesitated. He's in the atrium, trying to convince communications to prep a LinkedIn post about navigating turbulence with bold innovation. Gregory stared at her. I'll get him, she muttered and walked off. He stayed frozen, staring down at the clause again. Noticing, for the first time, the footnote at the very bottom, submitted post-review, authorized in full. Chain of custody, intact. Final digital cert S, Keller/hash a 14,357 FD. She'd buried the landmine in legalese. And Carter, God help them all, had stepped right on it, smiling the whole time. Gregory rubbed his forehead. Tell me you didn't, you smug little bastard. Carter sauntered into Gregory's office like he'd just been called in for a branding photo shoot. No knock. Just that smug, overconfident entry only someone raised on yacht summers and undeserved bonuses could pull off. The second he saw Gregory's face, drained, pale, jaw clenched like a vise, his stride slowed. Gregory didn't look up right away, just slid a printed alert across the polished walnut desk with 2 fingers like it was a court summons. Tell me, Gregory said, voice low and deliberate, you didn't fire her. Carter glanced at the document, confused, and then shrugged. Keller, yeah, I mean we didn't need her anymore. Compliance stuff's all digital now. Auto-sync dashboards. Her role was obsolete. Gregory stood. Obsolete? His voice cracked like a whip. Built the entire compliance infrastructure that holds this company's federal status together. And you fired her without checking the cert tree. Carter backed a step. No, hold on, she was good, okay? Don't get me wrong. But she was outdated, slow, never collaborated. We need people who move fast. Gregory slammed his hand down on the desk. The whole room jumped. Fast. You fast-tracked us straight into a $12.8 million freeze. Eagle just confirmed it. If Susan doesn't personally verify the audit string by 5 p.m., we lose every pending contract. That's the DoD project. The Homeland Systems deal, the energy grant, gone. Carter blinked. Can't we just reinstate her login? Julie, standing by the doorway, shook her head like she'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. The cert isn't just a login. It's a federal fingerprint. She retired it. And per Clause 14b, no one can replace her authority without dual written consent, hers and a federal compliance officer. You might as well try to resurrect a shredded birth certificate. Carter looked lost, like a high school quarterback asked to explain a tax code. She didn't say anything, he muttered. She signed the termination packet. Didn't fight, just left. Of course she didn't fight, Julie said. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what would happen. Gregory sat back down, pressing his thumbs into his temples. She walked out knowing we'd choke the second her signature vanished. Across town, in a small, sunlit living room, Susan sat with a mug of black coffee and a front row seat to the unfolding storm. She didn't need access to internal memos. The signs were everywhere. Dowridge's LinkedIn went quiet. Employees stopped posting curated updates about new chapter synergy. Junior accountant she mentored 3 years ago had texted her, "Hey, did something happen with compliance?" Susan replied with a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. She refreshed the LinkedIn feed again. Carter hadn't posted in over 18 hours. For a man who once live-blogged a lunch meeting, that was telling. Rumors started bubbling under job change announcements and startup applause threads. Anyone else getting weird vibes from Dowridge? Gov Tech contract update is MIA. Compliance cert chain drama maybe. Susan sipped her coffee, then opened her inbox. 2 new messages. One, "Hi Susan, hope you're doing well." Small question, do you still have access to the Q3 documentation pathway? Legal just needs a quick peek. Thanks. 2, "Hi Susan. It's Carter. Hey look, I think there might have been a miscommunication about how things ended. Really appreciate 5 minutes of your time. Just to help untangle a few things. No pressure, call me." She didn't respond. She didn't even open them fully. Just let the preview sit there like uninvited guests on her porch. Instead, she opened her task list from last week. One item remained unchecked. Watch them realize what happens when you remove the keystone. She checked it off. Then she closed the laptop and let the silence stretch. Not the hollow kind, powerful kind. The kind that waits patiently as the walls begin to creak. By noon, Dowridge Tech was a pressure cooker with the lid welded shut. Emails were flying like shrapnel. Phone calls rang out unanswered. Legal was whispering in corners. Carter was pacing like a rat in a burning maze, phone glued to his ear, voice rising in desperation-tinged optimism. "I'm sure she'll help. We just need to re-engage. Smooth things over." HR tried first. Melissa, her credit, kept it cordial. "Hi Susan, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to touch base regarding a quick procedural clarification. Nothing urgent, just a small checkbox issue from your exit documentation. Give me a ring when you can." She got silence. Legal followed 30 minutes later. A sharply worded email flagged as high importance. The kind that's all bullet points and buzzwords meant to sound friendly, but reek of quiet panic. For contractual closure, we'd appreciate a brief consult on a pending verification. Your insight would be invaluable. Please respond by EOD. No response. Carter, finally realizing that soft gloves weren't working, recorded a voice message. He was aiming for charming. What came out sounded like a used car salesman trying to sell you a warranty after slashing your tires. "Hey Susan, let's be adults here. There's been a hiccup. Might need your help with a compliance unlock, real quick fix. Just sign a few forms, click a few buttons. No big deal. You'd be doing us a solid. I mean, let's not turn this into some Cold War, right?" Susan was sitting on her couch when she played it. Her cat, curled up by her leg, didn't even flinch. She didn't reply. Didn't block the number either. Instead, she forwarded the voicemail file to one specific email address, audit@dowridge.com, no subject. No explanation. Just the audio file, clean and time-stamped. It took 5 minutes before the first board member opened it. 11 seconds into the message, someone added Carter's father, the VP, to the chain. 15 seconds after that, the board chair responded, "Please clarify the nature of this message and the termination context." Meeting in 30. Back at Dowridge, Carter didn't know yet. He was too busy trying to make a call list of anyone who used to work with Susan. He had an intern cold calling former analysts and ops folks, asking if anyone remembered her login behavior or where she might keep her files. Meanwhile, Gregory sat in his office like a man waiting for a tsunami he saw coming 6 miles out, but still couldn't stop. He had the audit board on standby. CTO had already prepped a press release in case of limited exposure. But everyone knew, if Susan didn't tap back in, it wasn't exposure, they were naked. In Slack, one engineer dropped a single message into the company-wide channel, then quickly deleted it. Too late, she knew. She always knew. The message had been screenshotted, circulated, whispered about in bathroom stalls and private channels. Susan didn't post on LinkedIn that day. He didn't gloat or drop cryptic quotes about karma. She just sat in her little house in the suburbs, watering her succulents and watching a baking competition show on mute while the emails piled up behind her. Because when the enemy expects a door slam or a scream and gets silence instead, that silence becomes a goddamn thunderclap. And Susan was deafening. The boardroom smelled like sweat and toner ink. 11 people seated, 2 on Zoom. One red-faced CEO pacing by the window like he was trying to outrun a stroke. At the head of the table sat Marlene Griggs, the board chair. 71 years old, 3-time corporate fixer, and allergic to incompetence. She hadn't blinked once since the meeting started. "All right," she said, glancing at her watch. 6 hours and 19 minutes until the federal lockout. We going to stop talking in circles, or do I need to start drafting a replacement CEO list? Gregory stopped pacing. She won't answer my calls. Legal tried. HR tried. Carter tried. Nothing. Marlene raised a brow. Carter tried? Carter sat 2 seats down, trying to appear busy scrolling through his phone, like a man pretending to look for his house keys after setting the garage on fire. I left her a voicemail, he muttered. Feel like begging was appropriate. Marlene's expression didn't change. Ah yes, appropriate. Like firing the officer of record mid-cycle and skipping the clause review. That kind of appropriate? Carter shifted uncomfortably. The woman next to him scooted her chair a few inches away, quietly. Gregory finally snapped, slamming his palm on the table. Fine, we'll call her, now. On speaker. He picked up the conference phone, punched in the number he still had memorized from old emergency drills, and hit dial. The room went silent as it rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then, click. Good morning, Susan said, voice calm, clean, unbothered. Everyone in the room sat up straighter. Susan, Gregory began, and for the first time in his life, his voice sounded small. We need your help. There's been an oversight. We're facing a complete cert freeze, unless we can re-verify the audit log chain under your credentials. I read the alert, Susan said evenly. Silence. He swallowed. Please. If you could just give us 5 minutes of your time, no, she said. Not just 5 minutes. I'll need 3 things. He looked at the speaker like it had grown teeth. 3. 1, she said, written indemnity, full legal protection for any recertification actions I perform under duress. I won't be the scapegoat. Arlene nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Carter. 2, Susan continued, a formal apology, signed and dated, from the individual who publicly called me incompetent and non-essential. I want that language used exactly as it was said. Gregory blinked. That's reasonable. 3, she added, her voice now sharpened like a scalpel. The apology must be read aloud. On record. During this meeting. By the individual in question. Carter let out a scoff, half laugh, half scoff like a kid caught cheating trying to pretend the test was unfair. Oh, come on, he snapped. This is petty. She wants a groveling circus now? This is just make the call, Carter, Marlene said, her voice steel wrapped in velvet. Now. The entire room turned toward him. Gregory looked like he was about to be sick. Julie from legal opened a notepad and poised her pen. Carter's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was under pressure, he tried. It's not an apology, Susan said, still on speaker. Carter's jaw tensed. Fine, he stood, cleared his throat, looked around the table like someone might step in and save him. No one moved. I apologize, he said flatly, for referring to Susan Keller as incompetent and non-essential. That was inaccurate and unprofessional. Susan waited a beat, add short-sighted to the list. He sighed, and short-sighted. Accepted, she said, without a hint of gloating. Gregory looked up. Does that mean you'll help us? I'll need those documents signed first. Indemnity, apology in writing. You have 15 minutes. Then she hung up. The boardroom was silent. Finally, Marlene looked at Carter and said, Congratulations. You've officially become the most expensive mistake in company history. And Carter just sat there, staring at the phone, like he finally understood he wasn't the protagonist anymore. Emergency Zoom started at exactly 4:00 p.m. Everyone at Dowridge was already logged in. Gregory, Julie from legal, the full board, Carter sitting stiffly in a suit that somehow made him look smaller. Two compliance auditors from the Federal Oversight Bureau appeared on screen in split frames. Stern, dry-voiced men in suits so gray they could have been forged from bureaucracy itself. And then, right at 4:02, Susan joined. Clean backdrop, simple blouse, hair pulled back, no makeup beyond what looked like confidence and sleep. She was holding a black folder, and as she adjusted her camera, the entire board seemed to lean in like schoolkids hearing the first note of a test they forgot to study for. "Good afternoon," she said, like she'd never been fired, like her voice hadn't become the axis of their survival. The senior auditor, Mr. Kohler, gave a curt nod. "Miss Keller, thank you for joining." Encountered an unexpected void in Dowridge's certification pathway. "I'm aware," she said, gently interrupting. "There was a lockout triggered by my status change yesterday evening. The chain couldn't resolve without the active officer of record. That was me. And you're prepared to verify the logs?" "Yes," she said, flipping open the folder. "I've reviewed the latest data. Everything from Q1 through Q4 is intact, and the system integrity holds. I can certify it now." Pause. The other auditor, Miss Leone, nodded. "Proceed." Susan entered a verification string. The camera caught a faint tapping sound as she typed, each keystroke crisp, measured. After 12 seconds, Kohler's screen flashed green. "So did Leone's. Certification restored," she said. "Your audit dashboard should reflect the change." Another pause. "Confirmed," Leone said. "Status locked. Compliance reinstated." Gregory slumped back in his chair like someone had finally lifted the boulder off his chest. A breath left his body so hard it fogged his glasses. But Susan wasn't done. "Before we conclude," she said, voice still calm, still surgical, "I'd like to clarify the cause of the disruption." Kohler blinked. "Go ahead." She held up a single sheet of paper, Clause 14b. Termination of the officer of record without proper override protocol constituted an unqualified removal. That triggered the lockout. The system functioned exactly as designed. She set the paper down. Silence. Then the auditors nodded, not impressed, just acknowledging the precision of it all. "Understood," Kohler said. "That will be noted in the report." Susan smiled faintly. "Thank you." On Dowridge's end, nobody moved. Not Gregory. Not Julie. Not the board chair. Not even Carter, whose face had drained to a color somewhere between printer paper and ghost piss. Marlene was the first to speak. She turned her chair slightly, fixing her gaze on Carter. "You fired the only person holding this place together. He looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet." "I didn't know," he mumbled, voice cracking. Gregory turned slowly toward him. His eyes were rimmed red, his jaw clenched. He didn't yell. He just whispered, "Please tell me you didn't—" Carter didn't answer. He didn't have to. Susan glanced once more at the screen. Her face gave nothing away, no triumph, no smirk, just the clear, quiet stillness of someone who had already closed the book and placed it neatly on the shelf. "Have a good evening," she said. Then she clicked leave meeting. The screen went black. And in the silence that followed, Carter realized something worse than losing the company. He'd still have a job tomorrow, but no future. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.